Jake Paul is a clown and Brian is a baby clown. That's what they do. They try to get fame off of other people's victories and things like that. So
Who's the Jake Paul fight next? He just called out Tank.
I think he deserves a fight. He can fight Sudo Ramirez, or he can fight the Mexican monster, David Benavidez.
And create an amazing sports story. And so I set that goal for myself, and I want to be impeccable with my word and stay committed and prove to myself that I can do this.
Gervonta Davis has responded to Jake Paul's call-out. He mentioned that Jake is a clown who is only after money. However, Tank said that he may fight Jake in the future.
When you retire, do you see yourself going the Jake Paul route?
I laugh because I don't want to say it, but
Say it, nigga, say it. You helping everybody else out, so say it, nigga.
yeah, I would. I would.
Who would the first celebrity you fight? Jake.
Yeah, I fight him for that money. Get him like 190, 98, 200. No, 195, 200. He definitely be in the gym, so I would consider him a boxer. It just, he got to fight a actual fighter now, like a fighter.
Who was somebody you could see him fighting, like
Me.
a real you?
Yeah.
After his win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Jake Paul called out Gervonta Tank Davis, boldly declaring his desire to become a world champion and take on the best. Jake said he wants to fight them all, showing no hesitation in targeting elite names. In response, Gervonta Davis acknowledged the call-out, making it clear he's aware of Jake's ambition, though many question whether Jake is truly ready for that level.
A lot more than that. I want tougher fighters. I want to be world champion. Zerto looks slow as shit tonight. That'd be easy work too. Badu Jack, I want everybody. Anthony Joshua, Gervonta, and Tommy, stop running.
Jose Benavidez Sr., the veteran boxing trainer and father of David Benavidez, expressed strong support for Jake Paul following his recent performance. He stated that Jake looked good in his bout and now deserves to face top-level competition, including Tank Davis and even his own son. In his eyes, this shift is positive for the sport as it blends entertainment with legitimate competition.
He was blocking and taking all his shots, but I think he just got tired, and couldn't execute it. So Jake Paul did a great job.
Who should Jake Paul fight next? He just called out Tank.
I think he deserves a fight. He can fight Sudo Ramirez, or he can fight the Mexican monster, David Benavidez.
You won that fight?
Yeah, he deserves to fight all these guys. I think it will be a great fight, and I think he did good. He deserves an opportunity to fight for the world title.
And what would happen if he fought David?
What was that?
What would happen if he fought David?
Well, I think David's in another. I think David's in another level, but let's give this guy an opportunity to fight for a world title.
Jake Paul's win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. did more than elevate his name. It shifted his official standing. As reported by Boxing Kingdom, if Jake Paul wins tonight, he will be ranked as a top 15 cruiserweight by two leading sanctioning bodies. This allows world champions to fight Jake Paul as a voluntary defense. Given the money Jake brings to the table, he will be able to decide which champion he fights for the world title at a time of his choice. Jake is now likely to be ranked in the top 15 cruiserweight fighters by two sanctioning bodies. This status grants him access to fight world champions as a voluntary defense. What's more, Jake's massive commercial appeal means he has leverage. He can choose when and whom he fights for a title. This positions Jake not just as a fighter, but as a real player in boxing's business and championship dynamics. While Gervonta Tank Davis is often considered one of boxing's most dangerous pound-for-pound fighters, Jake Paul's name arguably rings louder outside the boxing ring. Jake's influence stretches beyond sports. His social media reach, promotional skills, and crossover appeal give him a different kind of edge. Many fans and observers have pointed out that while Tank is a beast in boxing, Jake is simply bigger in brand, in influence, and increasingly in match potential.
What up, fight fans? Now, Gervonta Davis just called out Jake Paul after Jake Paul had his fight with Mike Tyson. Now, we all know that Gervonta Davis is a beast of a boxer, and skill-wise, he's a lot better than Jake Paul. Would it be smart to pair those two up in a fight? Would Jake Paul be too big for Gervonta Davis? What do you guys think?
Jake Paul has made it clear that this boxing journey is about more than fights. It's about creating an unforgettable sports legacy. In his own words, he's committed to setting an amazing sports story, and he's sticking to that goal with discipline. From his roots as a controversial internet figure to becoming a ranked professional boxer, Jake has turned skepticism into momentum.
In a ceremony that I was doing, he said that you have to become world champion to inspire so many kids and create an amazing sports story. And so I set that goal for myself, and I want to be impeccable with my word and stay committed and prove to myself that I can do this and become world champion in the world's hardest sport in roughly 6 to 7 years. Because I think it can be one of the most relatable and inspiring sports stories of all time, and no one thought it was possible. Nobody. Like, look, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people laughed at me. I'm gonna lose to fucking Gibb, then Nate Robinson, then Ben. Come on. So at the end of the day, that's my why, and I'm dead set on becoming world champion.
Jake Paul's manager shed light on how far he's come, recalling the Tommy Fury bout when Jake was still developing. Despite being green, Jake took on Tommy and didn't back down. Now, he's improving with every fight and racking up wins. According to his manager, plans are already forming for Jake to return to the ring by November or December, with Gervonta Davis being one of the names on the table.
I think he said it best in there himself. When he fought Tommy Fury, he wasn't even a boxer yet. He was learning how to box. Right? Now, 2.5 years later, he's a true boxer. The loss to Tommy Fury was the greatest gift in Jake Paul's life. Had he beaten Tommy Fury, which was a split decision loss, right? Not a unanimous, not a majority, a split decision loss, he wouldn't be the fighter that he is today. So thank you, Tommy.
If we expect Jake Paul to fight November, December time, is that what we'll see about next?
Yeah, November or December is the time when you'd like to do it.
Jake Paul's performance against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. drew praise from several corners of the boxing world, including rising star Ryan Garcia. Garcia tweeted, "Jake did his thing, outboxed Chavez Jr., which speaks volumes given Garcia's place among the sport's elite. Such recognition from a legitimate contender validates Jake's work and performance." Boxing veteran Antonio Tarver offered a balanced take on Jake's progress. He acknowledged that Jake looked good and showed clear improvement, but cautioned against rushing into elite matchups. According to Tarver, while Jake has demonstrated potential, there's still a gap between where he is now and the top-tier level.
But Jake was impressive. You know, surprisingly, he was impressive. He's definitely improving. You know, he got a good team with him and working on some things. But, you know, to become an elite fighter, it's like, bro, it's miles away from where, you know, they can comprehend. You feel me? And so I'm just watching the evolution. You know what I mean? But I see a lot of things from my optics. You know, every time I, you know, break it down, I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you the truth. You know what I mean? His jab looked good today, you know, but he knew the guy wasn't throwing nothing back. So when you letting your hands go and you know nothing's coming back, you kind of get comfortable. You know, so when you're going up against better fighters, they not only gonna let their hands go, but when you throw yours, they coming back with something. So, you know, Chavez didn't bring that to the game. He didn't bring that to the table. But Jake looked good tonight. The body work was good. But what I liked was his composure. He didn't get wild. He didn't get out of control, swinging wild and just fighting. He stayed composed. He stayed in his form. And that is evolution in the boxing game. He was more technical than that.
A significant portion of the boxing community believes that a fight between Gervonta Davis and Jake Paul lacks a competitive sense. Tank is still in his prime and has a line of elite opponents to deal with in his own weight class. Many argue that Jake, despite his growing record, hasn't proven himself enough for that level of competition.
That Jake Paul might actually fight Gervonta Tank Davis. This can't be real. When it came up a couple of months ago, I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to cover this because there's no way it's real. There's no way they're really going to do that because it makes no sense. Why would you do that for him? Outside of it, like, okay, you can look at it like an exhibition, which it will be, and we'll take a look at some of the rule set for it. But Gervonta Davis is one of, if not the best, biggest names at 135 pounds and is an active in his prime fighter. I don't want to hear the similar to Floyd and Logan thing because at that point, Floyd was retired. Floyd had done all he needed to do in the sport. Tank is still in his prime, still has multiple high-level opponents that he needs to fight. And you can say, oh, you know, the Jake would be a one-off. Side quest. That's fine, but that just tells me that Tank doesn't care about being a high-level champion in the sport anymore. It tells me that he's done competitively in the sport. If he takes a fight with Jake Paul, it tells me he's done. And that's unfortunate. Yeah, Tank has been talking about retirement, but if he goes this route, it's almost certain. Like, it's pack it up. it's over with because the fight makes no sense. It doesn't even make sense for Jake. For all the things Jake's talking about doing, it makes no sense for him. Again, money, sure. If it makes dollars make sense, okay, fine. But I want to see Jake in competitive matchups where I am interested in the outcome. I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested in the outcome of this. I was interested in Floyd versus Logan because there was an idea that Floyd was a little slower, a little older, and Logan would be able to knock him out. If Jake knocks Tank out, so what? What does that do for him? Because he said he could beat Canelo. He said he could beat Anthony Joshua. This one to me, like, I've gotten on board with a lot of Jake fights because they've made sense. Right? To me, they've made sense. Even Julio Cesar Chavez, after he's already beaten the guy that beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he beat Anderson Silva.
On the flip side, some fans believe that Jake's physical advantage and growing skill set could give him the upper hand against Tank. Gervonta Davis typically fights in lighter divisions, and stepping up to fight someone of Jake's size is a major risk. While Davis has proven skill, power, and ring IQ, the size difference is enough for some to argue that Jake could overpower him.
I would love to see Tank fight Jake Paul. I would love to see Tank show how unskilled he is and too small for the unexperienced Jake Paul, who will be too big for him, pause, and use his size and beat the out of Tank. He always tweet about, type about, got something to say, like he really running shit, but he stays little ass at that lightweight class, but being a bigger, smaller dude that can only beat the smaller dudes. And unfortunately, I would love to see the Tank fans looks on their face as they pull a mask off and all the rabies and all the disinfection disease, they've been clogged up their brains and their ears and shit over the years watching Jake Paul beat the fuck out of the small version of the wannabe hype job that's not skilled enough to use his size and speed. I want the fight. They both fight in the same lane. They content creators. They circus acts and stuff. So Tank would be right up his alley fighting a Jake Paul. I'm for it. So let's push for the fight. I got Jake Paul beating the tall shit out of Tank because Tank's not skilled enough to actually beat Jake Paul.
Jake Paul has repeatedly said that he wants to be more than just a boxer. He wants to be a symbol of possibility. His decision to fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. wasn't just about name recognition, it was strategic. Jake's goal is to show young people that they can start from zero and rise to the top, even in a sport as tough as boxing. He's chasing belts, but also legacy.
He's a former world champion. He is the most experienced fighter I've fought to date. And it's going to be a really good test of my skills, and depending on the performance that I put on, the sanctioning bodies in boxing will give me a ranking. And once I have that ranking, I'm able to go and fight for a world title. So this can set me up to become world champion and to be able to attain and get a world championship fight down. Yeah, I think a lot about inspiring the next generation. That's a big part of the reason I'm still so adamant about becoming world champion, because it will prove to kids that they can go into something at zero and make it all the way to the top in 6 to 7 years' time if they fully set their mind to it. So
Despite Jake Paul's dominant win, some fans still question the fight's legitimacy. Skeptics believe Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s lack of offense was suspicious and said that this fight was rigged. As one user tweeted, "Jake Paul fight clearly rigged. No way a real boxer sat there for 8 rounds barely throwing a punch. But in the last 2 rounds he starts to really box and looked fresh as hell. Nah, you can't tell me nothing." He was told to lose this fight and in the end try and get the win. Beyond fighting, Jake Paul has reshaped boxing's promotional game. He has introduced fresh marketing strategies from viral content to streaming deals and has even helped spotlight undercard fighters. Unlike traditional promoters, Jake brings a massive audience and understands how to keep them engaged. His success is rooted in more than wins. It's about how he's helped the sport evolve.
Jake Paul is unequivocally the most successful fighter in history 4 years in. No one comes close. No one. You couldn't list one that comes close, including Brock Lesnar if you include his WWE career. 4 years in terms of what he's done in terms of box office, pay-per-view, impact, helping other boxers, because he had platform, he had awareness, and he's got the focus and discipline to drive with it.
Jake Paul handled the media buzz around Davis's comments with maturity. Instead of throwing insults or stoking controversy, he responded with class, saying, "He's a great fighter, and he surprised me a couple of times." This showed a respectful tone and a clear understanding of the skills Davis brings to the ring.
Your thoughts on Tank Davis?
Man, he's a great fighter. He's a great fighter. He's surprised me a couple of times. We've had some word exchanges.
Yes.
But it's all for fun. I hope this fight with Ryan Garcia happens.
Who you leaning on?
it's a 50-50 fight, in my opinion. You know, Gervonta hasn't shown the ability to win a lot of rounds against taller fighters. And then he relies on the knockout in the later rounds, which has worked for him. But if Ryan could avoid that, I think it'll be his power and speed will be and range will be a problem for Gervonta. But if Ryan gets caught, we see what Luke Campbell did.
Yeah.
And Gervonta is obviously a way bigger puncher than Luke. So it's really, in my eyes, the fight could go either way.
Critics online have begun questioning Gervonta Davis's willingness to take on major challenges at 140 pounds. Some fans argue that Tank tends to avoid high-risk fights and that he might pass on a dangerous yet unconventional opponent like Jake Paul.
So Jake Paul said him and Tank were in negotiations to actually fight. Jake Paul would have probably knocked Tank out. Like, we got to be honest here. The fight was going to be at 195, and which means Jake Paul cannot come over the weight limit of 195. I think he could have made that weight. I don't know where it would have been. I don't know any more stipulations. It said it was going to be a normal boxing match, and where Jake Paul probably would have beat the shit out of Tank Davis. I'm going to call cap. I don't think Tank would have actually fought Jake Paul. Tank is scared to fight, you know, somebody at 140. I don't see him fighting somebody 195, 200 plus pounds. That's just ridiculous. That's unrealistic. I don't think Tank is taking that type of risk. Now, I know a lot of you guys like, oh, Jake sucks. You know, Tank is this, Tank is that. When you're that much larger than a man, your boxing ability goes out the window. It just really does not matter how much of a boxer you are. The guy is way larger than you. Like, I don't think Gervonta could do anything to even reach his face. He's 6'1". But you guys let me know, man. Who would y'all have if Jake Paul and Tank Davis fought? Like I said, I'm putting all my money on Jake.
Before any serious discussions of Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis can move forward, Tank has unfinished business. A rematch with Lamont Roach is likely on the horizon, and many believe that must happen before any crossover bouts are considered.
Yeah, you're seeing what I'm seeing. Tank Davis versus Jake Paul. I don't buy it for a second, but apparently they were in negotiations to have this fight happen if Tank Davis beat his previous opponent, which obviously ended in a draw. Which means he's obviously going to go and rematch Lamont Roach in his next fight. But come on, Tank Davis versus Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a cruiserweight / heavyweight. Tank Davis is a lightweight. This is Jake Paul's mindset. Okay, I'll fight a legit professional boxer. OAP. I'll fight a legitimate professional boxer who's his age, loses. Okay, I'll fight another professional boxer who's half his weight. Honestly, I don't care how big Jake Paul is, I genuinely do think that Tank Davis would beat Jake Paul. I think Tank Davis would be too fast, too slick, outbox him, move around. He wouldn't knock him out, obviously. I don't think he'd knock him out because of how big Jake Paul is, but he would outbox him 100%. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about this potential fight. I really hope it does not happen because Jake Paul needs to fight a legitimate pro who isn't a taxi driver, who isn't old, and isn't half his weight.
Some analysts believe Tank Davis moving up in weight could unlock new opportunities. It would test his adaptability and set the stage for intriguing matchups, Jake Paul being one of the most talked about. Moving up wouldn't just be about proving his power. It would show he can compete at multiple levels.
Tank Davis says that he's bored with boxing. He said if paid enough, he'd make an MMA debut. He said back in the day in the streets, he used to throw a few punches and then he'd go for the takedown and throw him on the back.
It's surprising to many fans that Gervonta Davis doesn't currently sit in the top 10 pound-for-pound rankings. Despite his success and unbeaten record, this stat invites a debate about how he's perceived in the broader boxing landscape. If Davis isn't at the top tier officially, does a fight with Jake Paul elevate or dilute his brand? For some, it's a legitimate risk. For others, it's a necessary evolution in boxing's crossover era.
Gervonta Davis is not a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter right now. He's arguably not even in the top 10 pound-for-pound right now. Despite how cool this picture is, it does not get him into the pound-for-pound list. Even though we could say that he could probably beat everyone in the lightweight division, even though I think he loses to Shakur, he hasn't done it, and he probably isn't going to do it. But what would it take for him to get to the #1 pound-for-pound spot? Let's go over what he would have to do to reach #1. Well, first off, he'd obviously have to go undisputed in the lightweight division. And even though that would be great, I think that only cracks him like #4. Because the only one in the top 10 pound-for-pound in the lightweight division is maybe Shakur. But realistically, he's going to have to do more than just go undisputed in the lightweight division. So obviously, he'd have to go up to 140 because there's no way he's making 130. And then he'd have to beat a dude like Teofimo, and he'd probably have to beat Devin Haney as well. And I think that could probably get him the #1 spot. But yeah, we can sit here and say Tank is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters right now, which I think he's one of the most talented, and I think he could do most of what I said. However, hypotheticals aren't going to work with pound-for-pound listing.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned until next time.